they come to the 8th pole, and California Chrome is absolutely sensational.
California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby.
Will take charge is surging, and it's a photo finish. It's too close to call.
African Story wins the Divine World Cup.
Macho Man!
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Thursday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Breeders' Cup talk as we're, about 31 and a half hours away from kicking off the big weekend. A little bit later on, we'll be joined by Randy Moss of NBC Sports, get some of his Breeders' Cup thoughts. Bottom of the hour, regular visit from Jim Miller out at Hawthorne. We'll talk a little Hawthorne for Thursday, but as we have been all week long, picking his brain as well on the Breeders' Cup. We'll wrap things up a little later on with Peter Rotundo, Vice President of Media and Entertainment for the Breeders' Cup. But we kick things off with our friend Ellis Star, National Racing Analyst of Equibase. Some Breeders' Cup thoughts this morning from Ellis as well. Good morning, Ellis.
Good morning, Seth, and good morning, racing fans.
And let's just get some general thoughts, Ellis. I said last week when the pre-entries came out, record number of entries. We've lost some of the marquee horses, and I'll toss in, I haven't mentioned it this morning, but yesterday it was announced, unfortunately, Magician has been scratched. So Wise Dan, Beholder, Magician out, American Pharaoh out. Again, we're losing some of the marquee horses, but despite that, I think betting-wise, a really intriguing weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, you think about horses like American Pharaoh, for those trying to beat him, it's bad because now there's going to be a lot less disparity in the odds once you get past the favorite. Magician, perhaps, Beholder for sure. Of course, she wasn't entered, but the horses that were late scratched, those examples, Free as a Bird, coming off a win at Keeneland. So it does make it interesting. I know we're not going to talk about it briefly, but the Breeders' Cup Mile, it's interesting. I noted in my full card selections that even though Wise Dan is out, we're still going to have probably a race that some people might be singling with Toronado. But other than that, every race is a betting feast, a cornucopia. I'd like to find more words I could use to cover it, but so many opportunities. I prefaced my selections on Friday or Saturday, I think both, with a comment that I'm going to be giving out more 4- and 5-horse exacta boxes than I do in a year on these 2 days.
And I've said that before. I think on days like this, the Kentucky Derby or these Breeders' Cup races where, you got a morning line on main sequence, a horse coming in with 3 Grade 1 wins coming into the race, 6-1 on the morning line. So you get value on horses that just normally you won't find value on, and it makes sense to kind of expand your normal betting comfort zone a little bit. So I have no argument with that whatsoever. Let's jump into it now. We're going to take a look at some of the races specifically, and we'll kick things off with the Breeders' Cup Distaff, the highlight of Friday. You have to kind of decide here what to do with closed hatches. I'm looking for a rebound. I put her on top. The price that I'm going to play around with a little bit, I think Tis Midnight is kind of interesting. And then I have Untappable under that one. Those are my top 3. And Ellis, while we talk, just want to, all week long on some of these races, I've just been showing some of the races of horses of interest just so folks can get a chance to see some of these as we come into the weekend. So while you and I talk, going to pull up the Spinster last time out and watch Don't Tell Sophia get the win, the nice win in the Spinster. That's win number 2 off the last couple of starts, having won the Locust Grove just prior to that. So she comes in some very good form. I didn't use her in my mix. She scares me a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the Distaff?
I didn't send you my picks, did I? We think alike a lot. And we never mentioned this before, by the way. I know you pull up some great videos, but for fans, when you're off the air and stuff, want to get videos, you can get a video of every graded stakes race in North America free at Equibase.com by going to the America's Best Racing section at Equibase.com.
Nice.
Don't Tell Sophia, I followed her career before that. She's a nice horse, but the last 2 races have been incredible. This is a horse that runs, and you're seeing this in the video, that she runs maybe an 1/8, maybe a 3/16 of a mile. That's all she runs. She loafs, and then she makes a move, and she's gone. And, Belcalante is going to have the lead here, but there's going to be pressure. Tis Midnight might go. I think the instructions are going to be interesting as to which horse sits in second. Belcalante has sat in second, but I don't know that she will this time. Close hatches, untappable, outside posts have to get in position. But Don't Tell Sophia just runs 3/16, and I think she's going to run by them here. So I did make her my top pick, Seth. The Close Hatch is my second win contender, and I got to use Bel Galante because the Beldame was just so impressive. If she can clear Tis Midnight, or she can sit second, and as she did, and it was an allowance race, but she did it in May before she started her win streak 2 later in the Delaware handicap, Delaware and the Beldame, I should say, not a streak, 2 in a row. She's very tough on the lead, so I'm looking at those 3, but I'm going to give Don't Tell Sophia my top billing here.
And let me just ask you before we move on, Untappable, what are you thinking there?
Well, my note on my PP says she's solid, but she's not the same as she was in the spring.
Yeah.
She's facing older, which is fine this time of year, and the workout, the 58.6, was phenomenal. Then she runs a 50, which is probably a conditioning workout for 4 furlongs, but it's a little slow. But her last Equibase speed figure in the cotillion was a 107. And when I look at her body of work in the spring, and I got to use speed figures as a comparison to what they could do today, representative race handicapping is what I do. So her 113 and 114 Equibase figures, 106 and 107 buyers in the spring. Just don't compare to her last race, even though she got back in form. Close Hatches, 111, 113, 110, 112, 111. Don't tell Sophia a pair of 110s. She's just not fast enough. Now, we're going to have that same discussion later in my interview with when we talk about Shared Belief, because he's not fast enough on paper if we look figures, but I'm not all about figures. Figures don't tell the whole story because he's got an alpha quality. Untappable, I think, is not good enough here.
All right, let's move on to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I'll be intrigued to see which direction you went here because I think you can go in a number of different directions. We had a seminar here at the Clubhouse Racebook last night, and I talked about this race. This is one of my best bets on the card because I really like Rich Tapestry. I think the Hong Kong Invader adds some real intrigue to the afternoon, and I'm going to use him on top. I have Secret Circle next and then Private Zone. But as I said, last night, Micro Margarita from Steve Asmussen I find very interesting. Saludos Amigos coming out of that win just a week ago. I like that they're kind of capitalizing on some good form right now. Indianapolis from Baffert is a little bit intriguing for me. So you can go 7 or 8 deep and make arguments here. Ellis, while we talk, going to pull up, speaking of Rich Tapestry, I did want folks before the week was out to get a look at that Santa Anita Sprint Championship. And while we talk, we'll watch the stretch run. It will be number 2, Rich Tapestry, getting it done. Notably over the number 3 Golden Cents and the number 1 Secret Circle. So again, for me, it was Rich Tapestry. What are your thoughts on the sprint?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember if I was on your show or not, but he was my top pick that day because I knew he had 2 good races at Hong Kong.
Yeah, you're right. We talked about that. You're exactly right.
He certainly, I made him my second pick here, so I'm not going to argue at all. And Secret Circle is on my list, and Golden Cents is on my list. But when I look at this race and I look for value and I look for a horse whose body of work is phenomenal, that's going to catch people by surprise, even though it shouldn't, but it will because you get this big field as we're getting all day, I go to the 13 Work All Week. I mean, the horse may look a little overmatched on paper, you know, state-bred stakes wins in Illinois, the Iowa Sprint, but he won the Phoenix, which is a good race at Keeneland on the dirt. He proved himself in Grade 3 company. He got a 112 figure, which, believe it or not, Equibase figure is as good as Golden Cents has been running recently, certainly, and some of the others. Their Secret Circle, 107 in the Rich Tapestry 111, so Work All Week ran as fast. And he's going to be 10-1. The horse is 11 for 14 in his career. Yeah. I mean, this is a horse that just has the mental and physical ability, and I don't think he's going to care he's running in a Grade 1 race. So I'm going to take him on top. Certainly Rich Tapestry, it's hard to make him a second pick, but he is here just barely. I made them both 7-2 on my detailed sheet, of course, which people can get at Equibase in various sites. And Rich Tapestry, second off the layoff, he has the experience over the track. He was impressive with that move. No knock there. Saludos Amigos, ode to the World Series. He could be the Madison Bumgarner of racing here. You know, Bumgarner coming back on 2 days rest, and this guy coming back on 6 days rest. It's the old Dutro trick, and you know, Jacobson knows his horse. He was impressive in the Bold Ruler. Humble beginnings, this guy, you know, claimer earlier in his career. You never know. Javier Castellano's going to ride. I can't argue with him as a contender at 6-1. Again, I'm going 5 deep in the race. So in order, it's Work All Week, Rich Tapestry, Saludos Amigos, Bakken, who is pure speed. Now Javier gets off for Stevens. Stevens coming back this week. Hope his timing's good. I got to take a shot. It's fine. And Secret Circle, 5-horse exacta box, maybe a trifecta box, maybe a superfecta box, and a great betting race.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. And as I said, I think you can make arguments for about 7 in here and have legitimate shots. All right, let's go out and get some thoughts on the Classic. And in this one, I do know which direction you went because this is the feature race of the week on the Equibase website. You can go to the site and find Ellis's comments there this afternoon, right now, in fact. But the Breeders' Cup Classic, I'm going to take a shot and look for Tonalist to come back. I thought that Jockey Club Gold Cup was very good. Underneath, I think Cigar Street is very intriguing. The older division is kind of falling apart, but this is a lightly raced 5-year-old who just might be getting good at the right time. And then underneath that, I have Shared Belief. You can't throw that one out of the mix, obviously. I know you like him a little bit more. And while we talk, I'm even more intrigued to hear your thoughts on the horse you had underneath. And we're going to watch the stretch run of the Travers right up here at Saratoga, where number 4, VE Day, just barely gets it done over Barnmate. Wicked Strong. We'll watch the Travers stretch run again. You have VE Day right underneath in your mix. I'm looking at this as kind of plan B for them because it seemed like they weren't aimed for this race and then they decided late to come. That kind of moved me off of VE Day, but you have VE Day right in your mix. So talk a little bit about your thoughts in the Classic.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I want to remind folks that there's a great special daily double from the Distaff on Friday at the Classic. It always has overlay value, so it's definitely a playable bet, and you can take some shots with that. Second, there's a bunch of ways to talk about this race, but first let's talk about the pace. So you've got Barron and Moreno, and we know, first there's a question of Barron getting 1.25 miles because he just cracked at the Travers badly. 1 mile and 3/16 in the Preakness, that wasn't his day, but I don't know that he can get it. But how can the instructions not be to send him?
Yeah.
And we know Moreno's going to send, even with Castellano. I don't think he sits. He tried to sit in the Pimlico Special. It didn't work. So I'm not sure what they do, but and Cigar Street's going to press. Now, I think Barron and Moreno get cracked about the 8th pole. Question is who's going to be there. Cigar Street could get first run. The reason he's not in my top 4, and he's actually 5th if I went 5 deep in the race, I would use him, and I'm only going 5. I think my top 4 stick out, and then Cigar Street maybe. Cigar Street got beat by Pick of the Litter in an allowance race, and then he beats Departing in the Homecoming Classic. Pick of the Litter and Departing ran 1-2 in last weekend's Haggard Fayette to close the Keeneland meet. That's a grade 3 race. So I got to view those as grade 3 horses. Now, he might be an improving 5-year-old. He's had physical problems, and he could be this good, Seth. I wouldn't leave him out of my exactas and tries, but he's only beaten grade 3 horses. The other 4 have all won grade 1, grade 2s, and those are Shared Belief, VE Day, Tonalist, and Zevo. And I put in my analysis, which, again, as you pointed out, free at Equibase, America's Best Racing as well. Shared Belief, it's not about the numbers. He's certainly light on numbers, 106, 109 Equibase figures compared to 111 for Zevo running second at Jockey Club, Tonalist 113, VE Day 114 in the Travers. But he's unbeaten, and he's got the mental attitude of a champion. He's not a win bet. I made him 2-1 on my sheet. I wouldn't bet him to win. There's no reason to bet him to win. You could key him in exactas. I'm going to play exactas and tries in the race, trifectas, that's for sure. VE Day gets the pace set up. I mean, he could be running on for 4th, but on the other hand, he could be running on for 1st if Moreno and Bayer and go 110 and change. Zevo's got the same thing. Outside of New York, I'm not sure about him, but I'm going to take a shot. His suburban effort at 1.25 miles was the race representative that could run well. And I won't argue with Tonalist. One lick. The blinkers off were a fantastic call on Clement's part. He focused, he closed. He's on an improving pattern of 3 straight improving Equibase and Beyer figures, and he'd be no knock it here. But look at Tonalist 5-1, Zevo 15, VE Day 20 is the best horse and the best bet. The best bets are VE Day and Zevo as win bets. I'm definitely loading up here in a 4-horse exacta and trifecta box with those 4. I might play a superfecta throwing in Cigar Street, and it is going to be a classic that is well named for what it is.
Yeah, it looks like a couple of really fun days. And Ellis, we appreciate the opinions. Always enjoy having you on the show. Ellis Star, National Racing Analyst for Equibase. And again, you can find his free preview of the Breeders' Cup Classic on the Equibase site. Ellis, again, thanks for the visit.